Welcome to First Class Fantasy. I'm Theo Gremminger with Billy Muzio. And today, Billy, we're doing something very fun. Billy and I are going to split a team in Best Ball Mania. So we are looking to win some serious money. This is a 18-round best ball format, 1.5 million to first place, 750,000 to second, 500K to third. This is a large entry format. So anybody who's wondering, that's a pretty big payout. Start doing a little bit of math here, Billy. But you get paid out, pretty deep into it these days on Underdog. But this is our first live draft of the year. Like last year, anybody the First Class Fantasy saw Billy and I do main events. We did 350s. We've done best balls. So it feels really good to be doing this early June, Billy. We're back in the draft streets.
Excited to be back. This is my favorite thing to do, is sit here and draft and talk football. So we can still get some points across. We can talk about different strategies. We can talk about anything we would do normally on a podcast, but we get to sit here, Theo, and do what we love to do most, and that's draft a fantasy football team. So excited to be here, excited to do our Best Ball Mania 5 draft. And to your point, you talked about large fill. There is currently 126,937 entries. The total entrance this year is 672,000, which is also 672. So 672, $15 million in total prizes. And they flattened out the payout structure pretty significantly this year, Theo. So they're paying down to 112th, 112th place. So there's a lot of payouts. So that is a pretty good payout rate here, which is significantly better than it was last year. And so I'm excited for us to sit here and do a draft.
Yeah, but Billy, we're not here to try to finish 112th on First Class Fantasy. We're here to try to make some serious money. So I think we're going to do a couple things here. Billy and I we start to align. We don't always agree on player takes, but once we start drafting together, Billy, I do think that we usually don't really argue about structure, about correlation. Like we're going to dive into some of those things. And this is going to be sort of an on-the-fly show where we are reacting to our build and what we're going to do next and a couple of picks. I always love like the final 4 rounds with you, Billy, because I think you are very good at identifying some sleepers and identifying like leaning into the correlation late. I always enjoy doing that sort of thing. It's a little easier when we're doing 20-round drafts, 18-round. Sometimes those last few picks are necessary structural picks and not necessarily correlation opportunities, but we're going to do our best to put out the most dangerous build that we can. How many are we at right now for in the lobby?
We got 2 people left for the draft to start. But to your point, the late rounds here, Underdog, they matter. When we're talking about 18 total picks, if you draw dead with one of those picks, I mean, that's a pretty significant hit to your overall construction. And so, this is where you can take some gambles, and if you do hit, then great, it's wonderful because you're getting quite the production out of a late round pick. But if you miss completely, or you draft somebody and it's not what you thought the role was going to be, and they're just not involved in year one, or maybe in the new offense, then it can be quite devastating to your build and what you're hoping to achieve.
Yeah, sometimes you get more frustrated by getting sniped in the 17th or 18th round than you do in like the first or second, because you have a multitude of options. Like I end up getting into like this routine where I'm drafting sort of the same guys over and over and over again, round after round when we get to the end game. So when those guys adjust, it's terrible. Like I know we had that opportunity in early ones where like Greg Dortch was like an 18th rounder. So easy to take Greg Dortch in the 18th round. Then that sort of ship sailed. There was a Josh Reynolds period of time. Now it was like Alexander Madison to me was like a really nice end game running back target of mine. Now you're starting to see him in the 17th round. So I will say that the Underdog drafter, it moves so quickly. All right, we're rocking. So we got the 102, and this is 30-second clock, so this is going to be pretty quick. Let's see what we're looking at here, Billy. Which way do you want to lean here at the 102?
I definitely am going to go chalk here. So Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, I believe if you have the 101, 102, you just got to take either or that are on the board. If you want to have any ownership of the two, just because you're not getting them at, very rarely at the 103, or 104, very, very rarely. So if you have the 101, 102, you just got to take one of those two guys.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think this sort of opens up a lot of things when you have the 101, the 102. Like you can get creative later. We've talked about this a lot. Like I think a lot of people want to get, super bold and try to be very unique at the top. But I think at the end of the day, like, we can get unique in the second, third round. We can decide other places to reach on somebody rather than trying to ruin an opportunity to take a chalky pick at the top.
Okay, so CMC goes 1. That's expected. Lamb, here we go. Lock it in.
Yeah, Lamb is fine, and I think that this opens up a lot of things. I think Dak is a fine value. We have the Week 17 correlation with Philly, which would be a good one to lean into a little bit. And Lamb just gives us a bedrock at the wide receiver spot. I took him at the 103 in the hardway draft. It's just really hard to imagine CeeDee Lamb not getting peppered with targets based on what they did at the running back position and based on what they've done at the wide receiver 2 position. It's like this guy could put up an obscene amount of targets this season. Had a wide receiver 1 overall finish last year. It's just a very easy pick this year.
So we got 15, 16, 17 correlation schedule here. Dallas is at Carolina week 15. They're at home versus Tampa Bay in week 16, and they're at Philly in week 17. So we got 2 road games during the shootout schedule, but two decent matchups with week 15 and 16. 17 could be a little tougher this year as Philly's looking stout again. So I think that we got some correlation to choose from here in round 2. A lot of options. We could, potentially get Devonta Smith and 2-3. You could look at Mike Evans. We could get Carolina players late, like Deontay Johnson. So there's a lot of options that we can do here to get correlation. We don't necessarily have to stack week 17.
No, not at all. And I think that we'll start talking about correlation a little later. I think when we get to, like, for me, the 2-3 turn becomes super important. I don't necessarily lean into the correlation at the 2-3 turn level.
Yep.
I think 2-3 turn is like, let's maximize our build. Let's sap up the best possible values there. And if they happen to correlate with CeeDee Lamb, then great. But we're not going to like force it with this sort of firepower. I'll say the 2-3 turn is money right now. Like, when you pick early on Underdog, you get really, really good options at that 2-3 turn.
Is that better? Can you see that a little better?
I can see it. I can, it's a little difficult to see. We're going to talk it out though.
Okay.
We're going to talk it out though. So
how's that?
That's much better. Now I can see it. I'm not squinting. So just to recap, it went Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Garrett Wilson. So Garrett Wilson goes ahead of consensus, sneaks in there. It's at 6 overall, a badged player. I got a black badge on mine too, Billy. Pretty cool stuff. We're tied in the badge game here, and then we see Bijan and Breece Hall, who we're starting to see creep into the top 5 routinely. Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ Brown, Puka Nacua, Jahmyr Gibbs. Then second round, Saquon Barkley, Drake London, Jaylen Waddle, a little bit ahead of consensus, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jonathan Taylor, and now we're sitting here waiting on this pick to come around. So we've got a lot of options. Who are we thinking about here at the 2-3 turn, Billy?
Well, there's definitely some players falling. I mean, yeah. Actually, we're about back to ADP now. But I think overall, one thing I would like to comment on real quick before on the clock. Your boy over here has a share of one of the only teams in the tournament with Bijan and Breece on one team.
That's literally impossible to do right now. I tweeted this out yesterday, Billy. I actually think when we get to Vegas for the FFPC main event drafts, like in the beginning of September, I think that the majority of them are going to have CMC, Bijan, and Breece Hall in the top 5. Yeah, I just think that's the way it's going. Our hardway draft last week, we saw B-Bag Batoba take Breece at the 101, sort of flag planting that. He's talked about him at length. And then we saw, Bijan Christian McCaffrey go at the 102 to Dan and Bradley Stalder of Player Profiler. They had the team at the 102.
We're on the clock. Nico goes ahead.
I wanted Nico there. I will say
Mike Evans gives us correlation, and I like him again this year.
I like Mike Evans, and then I look a little further down to the DJ Moore, Malik Neighbors, but I'm fine with Mike Evans here. I think that's a strong pick, and it's easy to stack Tampa Bay.
Okay, he's in.
Nico one kills me though. I really wanted Nico there.
I like Nico, but there's a lot of technically are we drafting him at ceiling right now?
I don't know.
I mean, you have a lot of weapons there. You have
they do.
Stephon Diggs now. I mean, Mixon's not a guy that doesn't get targets either. So we're talking about 9 to 10% target share with Mixon there. We got Schultz still there. We got Tank Dell there. There's a lot of ways to spread this ball. I love Nico. I had a lot of them last year, but it's starting to make me a little nervous.
I think for Nico, the argument is to the playoffs and those spike weeks we saw in the NFL playoffs and towards the end of the season. Again, there was less again. Okay, so for me, I like the idea of Malik Neighbors here. I don't mind Devonta Smith for the correlation, but I do like Neighbors a lot. If we went running back, I like Devon A-Chain here.
Let's go. Since we both like Devonta, I'm okay with Neighbors as well, but I like the correlation that we do get.
That's fine. So we're leaning into the correlation a little bit, and I think again, Devonta versus Neighbors, it's a similar tier for me. Yep, I do think Neighbors is going to be targeted more, but the quality of the offense, the quality of the targets makes those guys about the same.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%.
So Billy, let's run a quick ad. We'll be okay with running a quick ad here, Billy, or throw us off. Okay.
No,
we'll be right back. And we'll be right back. We should be picking again in a few minutes.
This episode is brought to you by Player Profiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help to strategize where you should take players because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our Dynasty guide, the Dynasty Dominator, would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our rookie guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. I mean, it's a great deal.
We're back, Billy. And I think one thing that's interesting is we have a 3 wide receiver start. So when you start out a draft with 3 wide receivers, it sort of gives you a little bit more flexibility. It seems like you've sort of pigeonholed yourself, but I think it's actually contrary to that, because a lot of times you see people having to play catch up at wide receiver, where I feel like we're not forced into like a 2-5, 8-2 structure here. Like we have a little more flexibility to get away. We could probably get away with a 7 wide receiver build here. Your thoughts on going early and then sort of slowing down the brakes when you get after round 10 at the wide receiver spot?
Yeah, I think it just depends on who's on the board and what the rest of the drafters are doing. I mean, there's times where, to your point, you may think that, hey, I'm going to only take 7, or maybe I'll go 8, depending upon the last few receivers. But then maybe this is a running back heavy group, and then now there's value at the receiver position, and you just take it. And so I'm a big believer in leaning into your strength in a draft room as well. And so keeping a strength to strength, and never want to kind of level out myself to the rest of the field. And if I can get a tier above in a receiver, but I need a running back, I might just lean into the strength here.
Yeah, and it's sort of there's people have different ideas on what the appropriate structure is, but I think again, you kind of nailed it, Billy, with being able to sap value and being able to win with multiple builds. Like there can be a 3 QB build that does well for you. There can be a 3 tight end build that does well for you. There can be a 0 RB build where I'm really like loading up on running backs in the back half of the draft. So we want to stay kind of fluid here. We're coming up on soon here, Billy. We're a few picks away here.
Few picks away. I just shared the draft board, so we got a little bit more flexibility there now, so the people can see it a little better. Let's take a look at who we got coming up. So a couple of receivers I like here. I mean, we could lean into one early tight end. That'd be fine, but I'm not opposed to doubling receiver again here as well.
I don't mind it either. I think we're very neutral. Who are the guys we have queued up?
I like Cooper and I like Kirk. 10 seconds.
I would like to go Amari Cooper. I think he's very underrated, especially in this format. And Billy, how could you not take Amari Cooper after he killed you at the end of the year in your best ball builds? And if anybody doesn't know, Billy had a chance to make Billy did well last year. He always does.
I had
Billy
25 teams set up for the finals.
Yeah, and if anybody doesn't recall, that was the insane Amari Cooper week. So now we're OTC. Christian Kirk goes off the board. Dalton Kincaid goes. I kind of like the idea of leaning into a high-end tight end with this pick.
Okay, go Andrews or Pitts.
I like Andrews. We don't really have any correlation, but Andrews is sort of set it and forget it.
Yep.
He also gives us the ability to go real skinny at tight end and take Isaiah Likely and just lean into that Baltimore tight end and not have to like double tap here. I like that start. So let's recap our start. CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, Devonta Smith. We get the correlation with Lamb and Smith, week 17 sweat. We get Amari Cooper, and then we get Mark Andrews. So I like this start. We're very strong at wide receiver, and we have an elite tight end. And Mark Andrews, Billy, this is a guy who could finish as tight end 1. Our friend Andrew Cooper came on press coverage earlier this week, and Mark Andrews is his tight end 1 for this season. I had Andrew Erickson on recently, and his tight end 1 is Mark Andrews. So there's people where the marketplace for tight end, if you look at FFPC, Underdog, like there's no tight end. Yeah, no tight end going in the second round on Underdog, but they're all sort of bunched together. But when you look at Sam Laporta, Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, like you can make an argument for all those guys.
You really can. This is what we call it kind of a dice year, right? Where you can just kind of roll the dice, and any of those guys could be number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Real quick, just want to talk about the Cleveland schedule for the shootout. This is one of the schedules that I know there's a lot depending upon Watson and how he's going to perform, but look at this matchups. Week 15, they get Kansas City. So we're talking about, having to play catch up, throwing the ball a lot. Week 16 at the Bengals. If both these offenses are at peak, this is another high scoring game. Week 17 at Miami, another high scoring game. So this is potentially, I put this shootout schedule up there with the likes of Houston, who's got Miami, Kansas City, Baltimore. So love the Cleveland schedule. Been liking the discount you can get late on Watson as well.
Yeah, agreed. I think Watson's interesting. I also think what's interesting with Cleveland is we think we have like this idea of their offense, but they hired Ken Dorsey. Ken Dorsey fired from Buffalo, had a lot of success there though, Billy. And I think he had Josh Allen. I think that's sort of a simple, like me and you could draw plays with Josh Allen and peak Stephon Diggs and we'd be okay. But Dorsey's an aggressive play caller at times. And I think that's been like Cleveland was towards the top of the NFL in plays per game last year. And we didn't really see the scoring output that correlated with it. We saw some success with Joe Flacco, but I do think that they're going to run a lot of RPOs. They're going to have a lot of deep shots this year. They got Jerry Jeudy. Elijah Moore's there another year. Amari Cooper. Certainly David Njoku took a big step forward. And Jerome Ford out of the backfield, I think, is a really underrated pass-catching weapon. He's actually a guy that I've been liking to click in some of these underdog drafts as well. So we'll keep Ford in mind for a little extra Cleveland correlation. So we see the usual suspects, nothing crazy with these picks. We see CJ Stroud go out. This has been a cleanup round for quarterbacks here in the 6th round. We see Patrick Mahomes, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud. So we see 5 quarterbacks off the board so far. 6 quarterbacks off the board as expected. This is sort of a big 6, and then there's usually a gap between QB6 and QB7.
Yeah. And I'm fine. If we're not getting one of the top 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks, I'm fine waiting now. You know how I am.
Yeah. And I say a 3 quarterback build with this structure is fine because we could lean into a Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield with another quarterback. I think the 3 quarterback build with those kind of guys is fine with me.
Now, this little group of receivers that we see that go here, the Godwin, then you got the rookies, you got Coleman, Romeo, you got Worthy, you got McConkey, you got Brian Thomas. We're on the clock here now. Do you want to lean into a running back here? Do we want to keep a strength to strength and get the correlation and go Deontay Johnson and then take the running back on the way back? Because there's 2 here that I'm fine with, or
I like the idea of locking in our running back and rolling Deontay. I don't think he's a difference maker for us. I'll take him in the 7th.
You got 8 seconds.
Favorite running back?
Aaron, I think I'm fine with Kamara.
Take Kamara. That's good. I actually don't mind. We talked about stack cuffing on our last episode. I think at Kendre Miller, Alvin Kamara, you're going to get a potential very high return double tapping those guys. And then we see Ladd McConkey go off the board. Let's see if this manager goes running back.
If he doesn't, I'm fine taking 2 running backs here too.
Me too.
I'd go probably Aaron Jones over David Montgomery.
Yeah, I think Aaron Jones is fine. I will say that the David Montgomery could be really, really fun if we ever saw Jahmyr Gibbs miss some time. We saw how impactful he was when they were using Gibbs less at the beginning of the year. That potential game with San Francisco in Week 17 could pop off.
He leaves us both.
So it's a coin flip for me. Both those guys are fine. I will say the quality of the offense in Detroit would make me lean a little bit into David Montgomery.
Do we want to? Do you want? We could also go Ferguson and take the Dallas and then hope Dak makes it back.
And then we'd be done at tight end and not have to worry about tight end in the back half of the draft. Let's go. That's fine. Okay, so we locked in Jake Ferguson. So our start here is CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, Devonta Smith, Amari Cooper, Mark Andrews, Alvin Kamara, and then we go with Jake Ferguson. And Billy, this is a really interesting pick because we've already leaned into the Dallas passing game, but Jake Ferguson last year took a big step forward in terms of usage, and they really didn't add a wide receiver 2 that is going to scare you off of Ferguson. We know the reliance that Dak Prescott has on his tight end, the big seasons with Dalton Schultz, the big seasons with Jake Ferguson. I don't think Jake Ferguson is like a world beater talent-wise, but situation right now, you really can't ask for a better one.
No, and it's also, I mean, I expect CeeDee Lamb to be there and start playing soon, but it gives us a little bit of an out if there is any delay in that contract negotiation.
Yeah, for sure. And then talking about a potential Dak Prescott, Dak Prescott it could be there for us next pick around. I think that would make some sense with what we've done.
Yeah, we already have some 2 quarterback teams. We got one already with 2. The right side looks like 1, 2, 3 teams are quarterback less. So there is a possibility he goes, but there's a very real chance that he makes it all the way back. So I've learned in at least in the underdog streets, there's definitely those who will snipe you just to snipe you because they want to. But a lot of the times people stay in their own lanes. They look at their correlation and their builds, and if it doesn't have any correlation with them, that's why we see sometimes players fall 2 rounds sometimes, because if you aren't attacking the player, nobody else is, and eventually he gets picked. But there's a real possibility he makes it back.
Yeah, and I'll say that the Jaden Daniels at QB 12 after Dak, we could also build some Washington correlation there, and have even Jaden Daniels, if you have no correlation with his rushing upside, I think he's the kind of quarterback you can lean into naked in this kind of a build. So if we miss on Dak, it's really not that big a deal. So we still need to obviously add some running backs, wide receiver. We feel very strong about our 4, but we're still looking there. Tight end, I believe we're done with this group unless there's an exceptional value correlation late on. This is like a 2 tight end build with these kind of guys. You feel really strong about that.
Yeah, and they're both, we talked about, Andrew potentially being the tight end 1. Ferguson could easily be inside the top 5 as well. So it gives us a pretty kind of a bully tight end, not necessarily full bully tight end, but it definitely gives us two stout tight ends that we don't have to add a third.
Legitimately, this could be 2 top 5 tight ends when it's all said and done. And we also saw Ferguson's potential for spike weeks in the NFL playoffs. He had a 3 touchdown game when Dallas lost to Green Bay. So, we'll see what goes on with Dallas this year. But
theoretically speaking, God damn it.
There goes Dak.
I was saying, as long as you make it past this guy, we're good.
Spoke too soon, Billy. You spoke too soon. So
right,
that's fine. Let him go Dak. That's okay. We're still good. Again, we have potential for Baker. We have potential for Deshaun Watson. I don't mind also going with Jordan Love here because there's plenty of opportunities. His wide receivers start to fall a little bit. And also I like Marshawn Lloyd as a potential pass catching back, especially if Josh Jacobs missed some time. Jordan Love, I just think is very, very solid where he goes and sort of stands out to me in this tier. If we pass on QB with these next 2 picks, then we're sort of into the weeds, potentially, depending on how the next round goes. We're kind of holding our breath. Okay, so Cortland Sutton goes. We're OTC.
Yeah, I like Pollard here. And that's probably Pollard or Jordan Love. And I'd be fine passing on a quarterback too and see what he does on the way back.
So let's pass on a QB here.
Okay.
And then we'll take Love if he's there next pick.
Pollard.
Pollard's fine for this build. All right, let's see what this person does. And Billy, I don't see this person actually does not have a QB yet.
No, he does not.
Okay, so we'll see. He takes they take Raheem Mostert. All right, hold our breath here. Could be a Jordan Love team.
There it goes.
Okay, so Jordan Love goes. I don't mind taking Jaden Daniels slightly ahead of ADP here.
I'm fine pushing it now. I would like even Tua or even Trevor over Jaden
Okay,
Daniels.
so then let's push it then.
Yeah, do you want to go Curtis Samuel, Mike Williams?
I like Curtis Samuel here.
Okay, I do too.
I think Curtis Samuel's a very strong pick, especially here in the 10th round. I think Curtis Samuel could have some spike weeks too. Because I think, Billy, if I look at the way that their team is going and kind of his versatility, I think they're going to use him as a runner. I think we're going to see a couple of games where Curtis Samuel gets a manufactured running play here or there, and he has a nose for the end zone when he does that. We saw Washington do it 2 years ago, and Joe Brady's had Curtis Samuel before in Carolina. That was actually Curtis Samuel's best season as a pro in terms of wide receiver finish was in Carolina with Brady. Now they're sort of reunited. So Curtis Samuel, that's a guy that we talked about a lot last year on First Class Fantasy, sort of as a flex and a guy that was sort of ascending waiver wire priority target. And you got, very usable weeks out of him for 2 straight seasons. He's also outproduced Jahan Dotson last year, which I think was telling. First round pick getting, completely annihilated by Samuel in terms of production and usage.
He continues to just outperform his ADP year after year after year after year. And so we've seen pretty much every year outside of his rookie campaign inside the top 50 at the position. Wide receiver 27 last when he was with Brady last. So this back to your point. His career year was that year with him, and so I'm expecting big things from him this year.
Yeah, and it's such a weird wide receiver group. Like Keon Coleman, they really want to be a thing, and there's a lot of great vibes there. But like the guy who gets a lot of positive buzz out of OTAs lately is like Chase Claypool. That's certainly not something we're going to bet on. Khalil Shakir has had spike weeks. He's interesting, but I don't see him being some massive step forward type guy in year 3. So I do think that there's an opportunity for Curtis Samuel to, again, finish inside of wide receiver 3 land this year. Like end of the season, he's wide receiver 30. I'm not like, we've seen this before with some of these slot types in Washington. And again, he adds that versatility with a threat as a runner. So a lot to like about Samuel. Nothing exciting, but structurally, I think he makes a lot of sense. And also, we went 4 straight rounds without a wide receiver. So now we kind of catched up a little bit. He's our wide receiver 5.
Wide receiver 5 gives us flexibility now. We could probably punt it towards the end and finish off with some receivers, or if the value continues to fall to position, we could take it. But it looks like we got 2 running backs right now. We may want to look at a third here. We can see what quarterbacks on the board here. We got some flexibility now.
Yeah, running back is interesting in this range. You start seeing, the Javonte Williams, the Devin Singletaries. Trey Benson went off the board. I like him a lot lately on Underdog. I think he's got some potential for spike weeks. Nick Chubb goes. Not a really guy I'm firing away on Nick Chubb. I think there's too many question marks about when he's actually going to come back. And I think Nick Chubb's selection forces me to draft extra running backs just because I don't trust him in the early season usage.
Yeah, you might not have him for 8 weeks.
I like Jerome Ford. I think Jerome Ford, again, we don't necessarily have to take him here, but Jerome Ford I think is interesting. You might get like 5-6 weeks out of Jerome Ford, and he's going so late in these drafts. So we see, again, the quarterback cleanup. Jordan Love went, and then we saw Brock Purdy and Jaden Daniels go. We still have a few QBs here, Billy, that are interesting that we don't necessarily have the correlation with. We actually do have a little correlation because we have Amari Cooper. If Tua is there, Tua is interesting because of that Miami-Cleveland game. Are we considering a QB? Or we see Chase Brown go, Tajay. I think that the move here is probably running back, quarterback.
Yeah, I was leaning that way as well. So running back, you can kind of go multiple ways here. You could lean into the Dallas stack. I'm not crazy about Zeke. You go that way. You could go Jerome Ford, lean into that game. You could go Tua and Jerome Ford. It's kind of where I'm leaning.
I like that. So I think that the move would be Tua first.
Yep.
And then roll the dice on Ford coming back.
Yeah, because he's down a little bit. Yep. Let's do that. Tua's looking locked right now.
Tua looks great.
And
Lost
that
all
gives
that
us
weight.
and that gives us the option too, if he does take Ford for whatever reason. There's a couple of the running backs here that would fit the build.
I also love the idea of just taking Jalen Wright.
There we go. There we go. Locked in. He locked in two quarterbacks.
Locked
too.
in. So we that was good. Okay, so we took Tua.
Jerome Ford.
I think this is Jerome Ford, but I'll say this: Jalen Wright would have been an interesting pick there too.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah, because again, Jalen Wright has like the double contingent upside bet.
Mm-hmm.
And he's electric and can catch balls out of the backfield, and that offense is just really good. I'll say it's difficult for us to kind of build correlation Miami-wise with Tua now, which is fine though. We'll have game stack correlation. If anybody didn't see the pictures on Twitter yesterday, Tua looks really, really good. He was super skinny. He won't say how much weight he lost. Tyreek Hill makes the joke that he thinks Tua was on Ozempic, which I thought was kind of funny. And there was a couple of Miami beat reporters saying that, like, from across the field, they weren't sure who it was. Like, noticeably looks, slim this offseason. The guy said he cut sugars out. Who knows what else he did? But the guy definitely looks good, and that offense is going to score a ton of points.
The good thing is on the way back, we know this guy to the left of us has 3 quarterbacks. So if we're interested in a quarterback, we could push it to the second of our 2 picks every time.
And I'll say this, that number 1 pick team, I would not have gone with a third quarterback. I think that Jordan Love and either Caleb or Trevor Lawrence is enough. You already spent a pick inside of the first 10 rounds on QB. There's no reason to triple tap it there. I think that's sort of an unnecessary one. He lost out of a lot of potential points scored from the running back position, from the wide receiver position, and a lot of those guys could be very superfluous. Those 3, I think Jordan Love will be the highest scorer of the 3, but I think it would have been enough with 2 of those 3.
So now that we've kind of shifted, because we started off with this kind of this Dallas potential, Philly correlation that shifted. We went and kind of did some correlation with, 15 or 16 with Tampa Bay, and then we just let the board follow us and kind of took the players that we wanted to. We have a bunch of mini correlated picks right now. We're kind of leaning into this Miami Cleveland game now, week 17. I wouldn't be opposed to pushing up Watson here on the way back on pick 13.
I think that's fine. We're already really deep into it. We've already pushed the chips in a little bit here. Might as well lean into it. And then there's opportunities for further correlation with Watson as well. Like we could lean into one of those late Cleveland picks. Like Elijah Moore is basically free, and he's, again, I don't think the usage is going to be predictable, and I don't think it's going to be consistent. But Elijah Moore is certainly a guy who can put up a spike week here or there, and it would make your team quite different.
Yeah, and then for running back wise, that opens up the board for us for Jaylen, Wright, and Rico as well to lean into the correlated picks that we have.
I love the idea of Jaylen Wright if he is here. I think this is perfect Jaylen Wright territory.
The kid's electric, but how much do you think he's involved? We still have I
don't necessarily think he's involved that much early on, but I think the argument being you've already seen these 2 players. Raheem Mostert has been –
they're both injury prone.
Yeah, but you think about Raheem Mostert when he was on your 49ers, Billy. He could never stay on the field.
No.
And now, okay, so I think it's Jaylen Wright here.
Yeah,
because we know Watson will make it back unless this psycho is going to take a 4th quarterback. So, okay, got Jaylen Wright, which is a nice upside play at running back. It could be a 0, but Billy, all we need is a couple weeks out of that Jaylen Wright, and you're feeling really good about that.
Yeah. How much? Do you want to gamble? Or do you want to just take them and lock in the correlation? I mean, there's
Dowdle is really enticing though.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, and we could try to see if the quarterback comes back. We don't need to have both quarterbacks week 17. We got 2. We got Team 11 as 2 quarterbacks. We have Team 9 as 2 quarterbacks. Team 7 has 2 quarterbacks. You still got let's the Dowdle go.
He took him. He took
Okay,
Dowdle.
we'll just take Watson then.
Yeah, let's take Watson. He got sniped us on Rico Suave. Okay, so Marshawn Lloyd goes off the board. So yeah, this is like the territory for like the running back cleanup. A lot of these appealing running backs. You see the Zach Charbonnet go off the board. You see Jalen Wright, Rico Dowdle, Marshawn Lloyd. It's definitely going to be like, I really feel like these rounds you want to attack running back because again, it gets a little sketchier at the end. 18th, 17th round for running back is tough. I mean, 17th, 18th round, Billy, ideally is like wide receiver territory. There's just more appealing guys there if you're going gut shots. And then there's a few tight ends that I've dove into. I think we're done there. But running back, when you get to those into the weeds, I mean, again, I talked a little bit about Alexander Madison. You're starting to see him go in round 17. So I like Will Shipley a little bit. Sometimes you get him in round 18. But round 18 is kind of no man's land for a lot of these backs.
Yeah, there's not a lot of backs that late. It's just complete gambles at that point.
I like the Denver guys late. I mean, I've drafted a lot of Jaleel McLaughlin. He's not that late, but I've liked the Audric Estimes, the Blake Watsons, sort of as an anti-Javonte Williams plays in like the 18th round, and they're usually there. But
yeah, pretty much after Gibson and Jaleel, it gets pretty gross.
Ty Chandler goes off the board. I like him as well in this range. Ty's interesting. That's been a guy who I've been like clicking on fairly routinely. Again, Aaron Jones, we considered him earlier, but he's 29 years old on a new team. And Ty Chandler played really, really well. Anybody who listened to First Class Fantasy last year, like Ty Chandler was a guy like towards the end of the season, we were encouraging you to really get in your lineup. And he gave us that massive, massive game in week 1 of the fantasy playoffs. Ty Chandler helped a lot of people get through, Billy.
And there's been a lot of positive reports. We go back to Jaleel McLaughlin talk from Denver right now about him being the first guy at camp daily. He's there at 5 a.m. every single day. So you got to love when Peyton starts pumping up a player.
I will give credit to and I'll give him a hat tip because I'm sure he's going to listen to this one. But Dave Hubbard, who routinely would draft with Billy and is a friend of ours, great high stakes player in the Hardway draft last week, did something that I've been doing on my Dynasty teams. And in Dynasty, I love the Jaleel McLaughlin, Blake Watson double tap. Yeah. Because if Jaleel McLaughlin is not a thing this year, then I believe it's because Blake Watson is a thing. They're both guys that, like we saw the undrafted free agent, Sean Payton thinks he's the smartest man in the room. So he loves the fact that some UDFA goes to the top of his depth chart and earns it. And also we have a check down artist, a screen artist in Bo Nix, and we have a wide receiver room that's devoid of like locked in target magnets. So I think the pass catching back roll in Denver is really good. I think Jaleel McLaughlin is a really strong value.
Damn, there goes my boy Marvin Mims, hoping to make it back.
Well, Billy, what are you going to do? Can't. So just to review our team, let's recap it one time before we get to it, Billy, and then you adjust it so we can see the current round. So it's CeeDee Lamb at the top, Mike Evans and Devonta Smith towards the 2-3 turn, Amari Cooper in round 4, Mark Andrews in round 5, Alvin Kamara in round 6, Jake Ferguson in round 7, Tony Pollard in round 8. Then we followed up with Curtis Samuel in round 9, Tua Tagovailoa in round 10, Jerome Ford round 11, Jalen Wright round 12, Deshaun Watson as our QB2.
We're on the clock.
And now we're OTC. Which way you want to go here, Billy?
And
we just missed Jaleel.
Yeah, running back just got cleaned up. Tyrone Tracy is interesting.
Tyrone Tracy, I feel like he'll come back around. I like Bucky Irving is interesting to me because we already have the Mike Evans.
Okay, I'll lock in Bucky. I'm like Bucky as well.
Yeah, Bucky could have a weekly role, but again, if Rachaad White goes down, Bucky Irving is the best backup to him in a while. And the guy led the nation in receptions by a collegiate running back last year. So
something else I've been liking to do, go back to the stat cuffing discussion here, is we're both expecting to have Nick Chubb out. We've seen Devonta Foreman be successful. We know Jerome Ford is not built to last with that many carries. Do you want to stat cuff here and lean into Cleveland and go Foreman as our last and final running back, since we're a little weak at the position, and kind of lock in that Cleveland backfield for the first half of the season?
I'm okay with it, and there's also a scenario that those two guys are the two running backs on the field in Week 17.
That's a very good scenario. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think we do it, and it's never exciting to take Deonta Foreman, but he's the kind of guy that will have 2 or 3 weeks where he just falls in the end zone a couple of times.
And we do have a fairly weak running back core. I would say that it's kind of our weakness on this team because we got 2 solid quarterbacks. We started with an early 5 wide receiver build, two stud tight ends. So this just doesn't necessarily, I don't want to say it shores up the position because I don't feel like it does. I think running backs are absolute weakness on this team, but at least it locks in the running back for Cleveland, regardless of who it is, for the first half of the season, and it possibly the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, when you get down to it, like, we're all rooting for Nick Chubb. I think he's one of the more easy to like players in the NFL, but it was a significant injury. And again, there's not an exact date for when he's going to be back. He's been a guy that's sort of easy for me to fade. We'll see. I mean, if there's positive reports, I can always kind of catch up with my exposure in the summer, but certainly early on where you have to take him, I think his ADP will actually go down a little bit. And we'll see Jerome Ford's go up a little bit when the market starts to realize that this Nick Chubb thing is not going to be somebody you see in the first few weeks of the season. I like the Bucky Irving pick too, Billy.
Yeah, no, he's definitely intriguing because I think we could both agree that as much as we both like Rachaad White, he wasn't the most efficient runner last year. They may look at getting more people in the mix and reducing his workload, and there's a lot of variables to and possibility of success for him.
And Dave Canales gone, we could see a lean. This is the new offensive coordinator could lean into more a little bit, not a committee back per se, but just mixing in a second back, keeping Rachaad White fresh. And again, Bucky Irving, how can you draft him where you drafted him in the 4th round? He was like the 6th running back off the board, Billy, 6th or 7th running back off the board in the NFL draft, despite his 40-yard dash time at the combine. So, like, smaller back with not elite athleticism, and they still took him where they took him. It screams to me that's a specialist they want to lean into.
Okay, so just from a structure standpoint, we're 7 picks away. We got some decisions to make.
We're 2 QBs. How many running backs are we at?
We're 2 QBs, 6 running backs, 5 receivers, 2 tight ends. Do we want to stop at 6th running back? I think we could. I mean, you can make an argument for, Braelon Allen or Tyrone Tracy if they're on the board here in 7 picks. And then from there, we would definitely want to finish off with two receivers. So we want to at least get to 7, I think.
I think we're a 2-7-7-2.
I think that's fine. Yep.
But I'll say, like, we do need to take the 2 wide receivers. If we see an exceptional value at wide receiver, I think we could be a 2-6-8-2 build.
And there's some receivers here that would fit the mold for us, leaning into this correlation. I mean, Elijah Moore late, and it's not sexy, but it does fit into the correlation. If you wanted to go that route, you got
18th round Odell.
Yep. I thought he just got taken. I had him in the queue. He just
I keep getting that's really early for him. I get him in the 18th round.
I did too. We just went though.
And we're not going to consider him, but a great guy for Miami, any kind of Miami build. Jonnu Smith is always a guy that I've been clicking, especially sometimes the way I draft tight end.
I have Jonnu. We have 2 solid. I don't think we need to go that route.
We don't need to do it. We'll just be kicking ourselves, Billy, if it's like a Jonnu 3 touchdown game in week 17. Just imagine. Be sick to your stomach.
I'm kind of leaning Braelon Allen here and be done at running back.
I think that's fine.
He's been getting, a lot of buzz at camp, talking about he's kind of securing the RB2 role there.
There was also they say it's not anything to worry about, but something leg related with Breece Hall, like a low key small injury that they're like, listen, nowadays you never tell the truth.
Yeah.
We don't want to wish anything like that, but yeah, Braelon Allen, that was a guy that went lower in the NFL draft than we would have liked. It was certainly a disappointment for, me and Cody Carpentier and Matty Kiwoom, who talked about him a lot in the process, but 20 years old, he's huge. And, it could potentially be a top 10 offense if Breece Hall were to miss any time.
Yeah, we're back on the clock. Receivers here.
I like your Braelon Allen suggestion. I'm okay with wide receiver though. If you see one you really like,
we took Allen last pick already. We're back on the pick 17 right now. So Tyler Boyd, Jalen Tolbert, Elijah Moore. We got Javon Baker.
I think Tolbert is one that interests me a lot.
Okay,
especially because we have Ferguson and we have Lamb, and I think Tolbert could overtake Brandon Cooks this year.
It's a possibility. I liked Tolbert last year.
Yeah. Okay, so we're in the end game now.
Yeah, we're down to the last pick, round 18. I'm going to throw some names in the queue. I'll keep John in here as an emergency if we don't like anybody else. But we got Tyler Boyd in the queue right now, Elijah Moore in the queue, Javon Baker in the queue.
Well, I'll say this:
you don't like it, but I'm going to throw Darius Slayton in the queue.
Well, I just feel like what's the point? You don't have any correlation. I know you like Slayton; he's a big play merchant. But I'll say Tyler Boyd gives us a little bit of correlation with Pollard. I think they're going to pass a lot. Javon Baker, just because I think he's good. And there's also, we don't know how that wide receiver room is going to shake out. Elijah Moore, though, Billy. Elijah Moore, with what we've done with leaning into Cleveland and Miami.
Yeah, that's why I have him in there. Makes
kind of have to go Elijah Moore, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Moore is probably the correlated pick here if we want to lean into it. I mean, if you think about it, the wide receiver one potentially for the New England Patriots is still on the board too.
Potentially.
I
think that's like a, I don't know, Jalen Polk, Hunter Henry. I mean, it's a weird room.
You haven't even mentioned the wide receiver one right now.
Antonio Gibson.
Nope.
Oh, Pop Douglas.
Nope.
Who's your wide receiver? Oh, your boy KJ Osborne.
I think Kendrick Bourne could be.
I mean, every week you love a new. You Billy, with your bad wide receiver rooms that you just like want to sap those guys up. You know, we got through a whole show of you not talking about Cortland Sutton and the Denver Broncos, but you were visibly shaken when Marvin Mims was taken.
Yes.
And now we're talking about the weeds here.
I love these late round picks that could really surprise people.
We're going to get a New England Patriots beat reporter on First Class Fantasy and just have Billy just loving life, asking him wide receiver questions for like 2 hours one day.
It's going to be so gross, but it's going to be amazing. It's just...
amazing. Okay, so any other players to consider with our 18th round pick, or we're going to lock in one of these guys?
I think we're going to lock in one of these guys.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a good strategy.
All right, I'm gonna ask you a quick question.
Sure.
How many touchdowns did Kendrick Bourne have last year? Don't cheat. Don't look it up.
I think Kendrick Bourne had like 5 touchdowns in like half a year.
Yeah, he was like 4 touchdowns. Okay, but so how many fantasy points per game did he have?
He was, when he went down to injury, he was solidly in wide receiver 3 land.
Yeah,
he had
12.5.
12.5. Yep.
Which, I mean, if you look at Curtis Samuel, finished as wide receiver 48, had 9.8.
Yeah. I remember because I had to write about Kendrick Bourne every single week in the waiver wire article that I write. And Kendrick Bourne kept scoring points, but it was also like people refused to add him as a waiver wire, addition. So it was like every week I'd have to write about him because he was available in like 90% of leagues. And I'm like, please get this guy. He's averaging 12.5 points per game. And then he got hurt. Unfortunately, he got hurt. And that season was over. And then we had to write about Pop Douglas every week. So it was like every week I had to write about the Patriots wide receiver room.
Yeah. I mean, take it with a grain of salt. It's still the Patriots wide receiver room. So
that's right.
It is what it is. So I locked in Elijah Moore for us just to finish the correlation pick. Don't hate it. Don't love it. It is what it is. But
yeah,
overall, I think it's just a team that I haven't built yet. So I'm excited for the portfolio diversity that we accomplished.
Let's recap the team, Billy. Why don't you recap this one?
So at the 102, we took CeeDee Lamb, come back around a 2-3 turn with Mike Evans and Devonta Smith. We're leaning into that Dallas correlations for down the stretch for weeks 16 and 17 between those two matchups. And then we get Amari Cooper, who follows us at the end of the fourth. We come back around and secure a tight end one with Mark Andrews. No correlation there yet, but we just wanted to go best player available on our board. We come back around at the 6-7 turn. We take our RB1, which is Alvin Kamara. I'm not saying like stats RB1, just our best ball RB1
for this team.
For this team. Yes, exactly. And then we get Jake Ferguson. We lean into two tight ends and be done at the position and kind of, leaned into that Dallas correlation. Tony Pollard in Tennessee. Now we take him at the round 8, Curtis Samuel round 9. Again, no correlation, just taking our best players available. And then we start leaning into the correlation a little bit more. We shifted gears to that Miami-Cleveland game, and we take Tua
At quarterback in round 10, we take Jerome Ford as our RB3 now in round 11. Come back around and continue to lean into that correlation. That game there is Jalen Wright. We get at the 12th pick, and then we get 13th pick. We get Deshaun Watson, and then we identify our weakness and we lean into it, and we go 3 straight running backs in rounds 14, 15, 16, and those names are Bucky, Irving, Foreman, and Braelon Allen. And then we finish the draft with 2 more receivers, leaning into the kind of mini correlated stacks that we have with Jalen, Tolbert, who we think is going to be emerging more this year as the wide receiver 3, potentially our wide receiver 2 in Dallas towards the end of the year, and then Elijah Moore to finish things off, leading into that correlated stack.
Yeah, I like it a lot. We leaned into Cleveland, Miami, and I think we built off of our CeeDee Lamb pick with, Tolbert and Ferguson. We built correlation that way. I like what we did. I think we need to get in. We need to draft again. Billy, this was a lot of fun today. Let everybody know what you have coming out.
Matt and I are on a podcast tomorrow with Bob Lung talking about the FF Expo. Also going to be talking about, the app that we've built a little bit and about the table that you and Matt are going to have down at the Expo. I won't be able to make it. That's my anniversary weekend. So I'm 4 years off, 3 years on at the Expo, just the way that it lands on the calendar. I'm going to be down in Playa del Carmen that week, Theo. So I'll be thinking of you as you're working at the table. I'll be drinking cocktails out of a coconut down on the beach, and I'll be thinking of you.
Shout out to the Muzio family on the anniversary, but I am looking forward to the Expo. Let us know in the comments and chats if you're going to be at the Fantasy Football Expo. And if you enjoy watching Billy and I do live drafts, click that like button. We're going to plan a couple more of these. First Class Fantasy every single week. We're going to see you guys soon. Every Thursday, 3:30 p.m. We've got a lot of fun shows getting you ready to crush it in 2024 fantasy leagues.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.